Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful fall day. It's a good day for tea. I'm going to wait for a couple of people to get on here. Welcome to Vesperisms. Welcome to my Tuesday Insta-Live. Sorry, I've been a little late getting on here lately, but it's a very busy season for me. I've got a lot going on. So I'll just wait for a couple more people to join. And then we'll get started. I'm going to turn on some music here. Hopefully it won't be too distracting. But I need a little vibes. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes. Maybe not a couple minutes, maybe 30 more seconds. Get some folks on here. And then we'll jump in and get started. So it is fall. Well, it will be soon enough, but the temperature has dropped a bunch and I'm coming alive again. I think you can probably see it in my face. I'm a lot brighter than I was even last week. Oh, hi, good morning. So it's fall and I've got all the cozy things. I've got music, I've got a sweater on, I've got tea. I've got my ginger spice candle, which I ration all through the year so that I can burn it freely in the fall. So these things make me really happy. So just going to wait a couple seconds for more people to jump on, but couple things. The playlist I'm playing right now is on Spotify. It's called Zen Indie Folk for Focus. It's one that we listen to in grad school a lot. It's fantastic for working. So if you need a non-lyrical concentration playlist that's not like trancey or anything like that, it's just like music. Not that trance stuff isn't music. I love that stuff too, but this is good. Zen Indie Folk for Focus. Couple news items. I have a new website. So author-illustration.com is updated. It's pretty. I'm very excited about it. It's been a couple years since I updated, so go to author-illustration.com. I have a podcast coming out this week. I was a guest podcaster on Makers and Mystics podcast this week, and so I'm really glad. I'm really excited to share that episode with you. I'll be talking about an artist who's very special to me, a historical artist, and so I think that comes out tomorrow. So stay tuned to Makers and Mystics for that podcast. I'm really excited about that. September 22nd at the 14th Street Y in New York, I have a solo show of the artwork from What the Night Sings. So I'm really excited. That's really coming up. That's in just about a week and a half. And thanks. Yeah, it's going to be a fun podcast. I think you'll like it. It's about just one of my favorite people in the whole wide world of history. She's not here anymore. But anyway. So I think that's all of my news items. So let's jump into what we're going to talk about today. All right. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the revisions process in writing, on our little book that we've been going through called On Tyranny, and on staying curious. So these things all relate. How do tyranny and manuscript revision relate? Well, stay tuned. Okay, so revision is an interesting phase of the writing process. So here are my stages of writing, all right? First comes the brain dump, then comes the machete, then comes the zombie shuffle, then the murder of the darlings, and then the phoenix, the spit shine, and then the genuflection. Okay, so I'll describe these. Okay, so the brain dump is when you're writing your first draft. It's when you don't censor yourself at all. You just get all your ideas down. You're just you're just writing, stream of consciousness. You're getting the story down. That's the brain dump. The machete comes when you bring the revision process into it, and there's lots of different methods to do this, but the basic method for revision is that you print out your whole manuscript and you slash and you cut and you paste and you reorder things, and it's just a huge mess. So that's the machete. Then the zombie shuffle comes when you've got that manuscript, you've done your notes, you've gotten it organized, and you realize, holy crap, I don't know what this story is. I don't know what to do with it now. And you just kind of shuffle around and, well, I'll describe the zombie shuffle a little bit more in a minute. Then there's the murder of the darlings, okay, where you have to let some things go. And so it's just death everywhere. It's death and destruction. And then comes the phoenix, where something rises from the ashes and the manuscript and story you thought was dead comes back to life. Then there's the spit shine, when your editor and your copy editor, get in there and they do the line edits and the proofreading and all of that stuff. And then that's the spit shine. And then the last stage is what I call the genuflection. So when you just say, okay, now it's done. That's the final version. And yeah, right. And you just kind of pass it off and you trust that everybody's going to do what they need to do to it, and it's going to wind up on the bookshelves and it's done. Okay. So right now where I'm at, good morning. So right now where I'm at in the revision process is I've just come out of the zombie shuffle. So I have spent weeks, literally weeks, wandering around, not knowing where the heck I am in this story. And day after day, it's like you look at your manuscript and you think it's like you wrote it in some ancient dead language that you can't decipher. You're like, I don't even, what am I reading? I don't know English. Nothing makes sense. And then you make yourself your 5th cuppa of the day, and you voxer your friends and you tell them that you have no talent and you chose the wrong career, and you never want to write another book again. So this is the zombie shuffle. Okay. But then I had one conversation with my husband, one good conversation about how I thought that I might have to murder a few of my darlings. And they were things that my editor had already said in her revision notes, but I was like, no, I'm going to put this stake in the ground, and I am not giving up this character, and I am not giving up this storyline. But then I'm talking to my husband and I'm like, I think I have to kill those darlings. I think those are the very things that I need to let go in order to make this story move forward. And then you get out your murder weapon, the red pen, and you start slashing and burning, and it's not as hard as you thought. And you go, yeah, I think my sanity's returning, and I think the story's going to be hella good. Because these elements are gone, because they were things that were standing in the way. All right. The only way that you get from one stage to the next in that process is by staying curious. Okay. So what do I mean by that? I mean keeping yourself open to possibility, even hard possibilities. All right. My grandfather passed away 16 years ago next month. And he was the most precious man in my life. But he was by far the most curious-minded person I have ever met, still to this day, hands down. And I've known a lot of people. It wasn't just that he was an engineer, his curiosity. It wasn't just that he was an engineer and he had a brilliant mind for detail and invention, but he was fascinated by people. He was a brilliant question asker. I've always kind of said that there's 2 kinds of people in the world, askers and tellers. And I'm always drawn to people who know how to ask really good questions of people. They know how to draw you out of yourself. Even people who don't like to talk about themselves, like a really good question asker it's like effortless. And he was one of these people. And I'm always drawn to people like that. I'm naturally more of a teller than an asker, and I don't like that about myself. I find tellers to be really off-putting, and I have to really work hard to make sure I'm not being off-putting to people by just telling people how it is. But at his wake and his funeral, person after person would come up to me and or I'd overhear conversations about my grandfather, about how Ronald Young made them feel seen, and he was curious about them. He remembered everyone's name, and he remembered what they were into. He could pick up after years of conversation, and he was the reason why I felt confident to pursue a career as an artist? It's my grandfather. Because he was always asking me questions designed to draw me out and keep me asking questions of myself, and not just settling into, settling into comfort or the status quo. He was a gentle man, not someone who dominated a room with a big personality or, like I said, like being a teller, but he was someone who was so open to life. He was so curious, and he really inspired me to pursue that way. I'm not saying that I'm like him, but I want to be. All right. You don't find people like that nowadays, really. I find that a lot of people I meet are really scared. I mean, don't you feel that way? Don't you feel like people these days are really scared of life? Really scared of like the externalities and of their circumstances? I don't know. I mean, shout at me if you do. Oh, hi. Thank you. Shout at me if you feel like it feels like like people are just freaking out right now, right? In general, that's like the general zeitgeist. And so I just want to examine for a moment our little guidebook on tyranny and see what it has to say about curiosity and fear. Okay, so this is just one paragraph from chapter 1, okay? And it's a good one, and it kind of sets the pace for the whole book that we've been talking about. Chapter 1, do not obey in advance. Okay. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In other words, it's not about the leader. It's about us. In times like this, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want, and then offer themselves without being asked. Let that sink in for a second. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. That's chilling. And the reason this relates to curiosity is that when people are afraid, they close themselves off to questions. They close themselves off to possibility. So think of that paradigm of like my grandfather that I just explained to you. It's like he was all about people, so curious, so open. And at the end of his life, what was said about him was that he was a person who could draw other people out. He was a person that kept open to possibility and kept others open to possibility. So, again, I always want to state this. I am anti-partisan. I'm not apolitical, but I am anti-partisan. So I listen very closely to what both sides of the divide are saying. And I can safely tell you that they're both equally afraid. They're both equally afraid of tyranny, of authoritarianism, but they're both largely being very obedient to their side, and it's because of fear. The right fears the authoritarianism of the left that could rise to power, and the left fears the authoritarianism of the right that is in power. Both have their points. They're both correct, and they're both wrong. There is much to be skeptical of, to say the least, about the current administration. Now, if you're just joining, by the way, I see some more people joining, but I'm not only talking about politics. This is relating to art and revision process and curiosity, okay? But we just have to take this little detour for a minute. So just like in every administration, there's a lot to be skeptical of. There's a lot to get angry about, whatever. Maybe this one's more acute. Maybe not, but that's moot for the moment, for my point. What I've been saying for a while in these videos is that it's not the leader who is largely the problem, especially in a democracy. As much as the fear may tell us we're not living in a dictatorship. We'll talk more about that in a later chapter of our little guidebook on the one-party state. But we live in an elected democracy, and we have the right to cast our votes and oust the current folks in very short order if we can keep our heads straight, if we can keep our minds open and curious. And we have that opportunity every 2 years, not 4. So this morning, I took a fun little quiz in the New York Times. It's called, Can You Spot the Deceptive Facebook Post? So it was a little thing where they would give you 2 Facebook pages, like with a little meme, and see if you could spot the one that was real or the one that was created by a Russian influencer. And it was really fun, and I'm happy to report I only got one wrong. So Maybe it's because I've been largely off Facebook for a while now and my perceptions are like a lot more clear because I've pretty much stopped the algorithm from controlling my perceptions. And this is why I'm barely on Twitter as well, because just like, I like you guys on Instagram. This is awesome because the basis is beautiful pictures and artwork, and it's really uplifting. And when you work alone and you're an extrovert, you need to keep your eye on like beautiful things. And it keeps my curiosity alive. I'm looking at master artists, I'm looking at dancers and other creators, I'm listening to musicians like Deborah, if you're still on. And it sparks me to want to get to work and integrate all that beauty into my own work. It keeps me open. But when I bounce over to the other platforms, I literally see nothing but fear. Nothing but fear. People are freaking out. And the crazy thing about this quiz that I took this morning is that the deceptive Facebook pages were made to target both right and left with issues of social justice, and they were organizing protest events. That's the crazy thing. You'd have a little meme designed to get your hackles up about someone who was messing with your tribe, and then there'd be an event scheduled. This is the insidious thing. A rally, a protest, or whatever. And again, it was left and right, both. All the while organized by someone halfway across the world who was just trying to get a rise out of us. Isn't that sick? So when I do go to Facebook to check on my illustration page, I have this one dear friend who always shows up first every time. And all she posts are articles about Trump. Nothing about herself, nothing about her brilliant research work. She's a PhD. Nothing about all these other things that make her an incredible, beautiful, and interesting person. It's almost completely fearful, fist-shaking about Trump. Listen, I'm not a Trump fan. I can say this 25 times, but I'm afraid that this person who I love has been so swallowed up by fear that it's killing her curiosity, her openness to life, and her outlook on the world. Being controlled by fear, of the world, of failure, fear of lack of money or other resources or opportunity, it controls you. It robs our joy, and it can make us do things we would never imagine, say things we would never imagine, because we just want somebody to tell us the answers. We anticipate what we think people want us to do or want us to think. So here's an extreme example from our little book here, but every extreme has its basis in something inherent, I think. So I hope this music isn't too loud for you guys, but I'm digging it. Okay, in 1941, so again, this is On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. But in 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union, the SS took the initiative to devise the methods of mass killing without orders to do so. They guessed what their superiors wanted and demonstrated what was possible. It was far more than Hitler had thought. There's more in this chapter. It's a fantastic chapter, and if you don't have this book, I really recommend it. It's just $5 or so. But this is the thing. When it's not just about what the leader is saying, it's about us. When we close ourselves off to curiosity and we just get about the party line and what we think is being on the right side of history or whatever, we can wind up checking our brains at the door and doing the zombie shuffle. So remember what I described earlier about the revision process. Fear makes you live in the zombie shuffle. The zombie shuffle comes because you close yourself off to possibility. So there's this artist that I love. He's an icon carver in Montreal, the Orthodox icon carver named Jonathan Pajot. And he has a brilliant talk called Pentecost for the Zombie Apocalypse. I highly recommend listening to this talk. It is amazing. But he says that zombies want to eat the brain because they can't access the mind. So when we're in fear, we're not accessing the mind. we're just eating brains. Okay. We're wandering around. We're just like consuming, we're letting things, maybe I'm not articulating that really well, but maybe it's just because I came out of the zombie shuffle myself. But the second you open yourself up to possibility that you might need to let some things go, or you might need to kill some darlings, or you might need to let go of some assumptions, then the peace comes and the ideas start flowing and you can move forward. So what does this mean practically? Okay, so we've covered a lot of different disparate things here, but so I've been trying to share with you for a while in these talks that there's a different way to think about the world that can lift you out of that gridlock of thinking that everything has to be political, or that you have to choose a side, or you have to be on the right side of history, or any of that. Now, maybe it's just because of the way I am, but I reject that. I just want to ask you to think, without belaboring it right now, what is one thing you are afraid of? Just one area you've closed yourself off to and said, I can't take that risk. Now, maybe it's a rational risk. Okay, so I'm not talking about crazy risks like leaving your family to go live some fantasy life in Vegas or something, or selling all your possessions and becoming a hermit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these things in our work, these things in our relationships, that conversation you might need to have with someone who hurt you, or maybe who you've hurt, that professional risk you've been needing to take, submitting to that agent or that editor or that gallery, auditioning for that dance company. It could be anything that you've been avoiding because you're too scared to fail. Maybe it's a character you need to completely eliminate, as I just did, or an entire storyline that you need to eliminate, like I also just did. For me, it's about a quarter of my manuscript that I'm about to completely slash and burn and scribble out in blood. I mean, the red pen. So here's my encouragement to you today. Stay curious. Stay open. Don't let anyone control you with fear. Stay awake and stay independent-minded. Don't be tribal. Be about people, especially the people who make you angry or afraid or annoyed, and especially about the darlings in your manuscript that you may need to just kill. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, and drop me a line. Keep the conversation going. Talk to you soon. Bye.